Addison Trail is celebrating their 50 years. We're all excited to bring you some perspectives from a faculty standpoint. Stay tuned to watch some of the activities that they participated in. Hi, I'm Burt McDonald. I was a faculty member at Addison Trail High School, and we're doing some reminiscing at the 50th anniversary. We're going to talk about activities. I was a guidance director and a counselor. I was a class sponsor. I worked with the blood drive, among other things. Phyllis Geyer was a dean at Addison Trail and was also with the home economics department at one point. Nina Pulliam was in the English department, and she worked with the yearbook. Dan Jarris, the list will be, it'd be like Santa's list. He worked for so many different things. And Larry Weck was a principal at Addison Trail, and he had to put up with all the different activities there were. So again, let's get started. I welcome you. When Addison Trail first opened, the two of you were part of the faculty. And from what I could tell, looking at the yearbook, there were a lot of activities for our first year of school. Now, I assume most of those came from York and Willowbrook because that's where we got the students from. Did they try to match up most of the things that were going on at the other schools? Was that a goal, do you think?
I think it was, and what the students or the kids that were coming there wanted to do, pretty much they would find a sponsor or somebody to help them follow through and have that activity.
Nina, you were one of the first there. As I recall talking, you said there was a council or something to help get those activities organized at the beginning?
I think so. Actually, I know that things were ready, and I came in with a yearbook staff and an editor and a business manager and a whole group from both Willowbrook and York High School. And there was an advisory council that kind of oversaw much of the activities like the homecoming and the sock hops and that to start before a student council was even elected. And
I think we have some photos of that first. I mean, it looked like a pretty well done homecoming. I think we have some photos of that from the yearbook where they had floats, and I'm sure the band participated. So right off the bat, and that's early in the year, teachers were very involved in getting that stuff ready to go, right?
They were really organized to start Addison Trail. I mean, a year before it happened, a lot of teachers were hired. They needed them for Willowbrook and Addison Trail, and they were hired, and a lot of those teachers were busy organizing and knowing what they were going to do when they came to Addison Trail. It wasn't just get hired and come to Addison Trail, and all the department chairmen were setting up things, and so the teachers were setting up the activities and having them ready to go when it opened.
Was that your first time working with a yearbook?
no,
No, you worked with a yearbook before.
I had done it in Decatur. That's probably why they hired me.
Okay, but still blending two yearbook staffs and so on, it's got to be
There were
a little...
arguments because there was a difference in philosophies between the two books. Willowbrook was one that had a lot of pictures and few words. York was the one that wrote a lot, and the conflict there was on what it would be like. Now, when I arrived, I called both yearbook sponsors, and I got one like, anything I said, yeah, we do that, and I don't think the guy from Willowbrook knew what he did. And then the one from York was pretty positive we wouldn't be able to do anything, so she sent a card table and 4 kids over to sell York yearbooks in the cafeteria.
So there's still a little bit of that. Oh, I noticed in the first yearbook, somebody pointed, I think Don Weiss, who is the communications director here at the Addison, he looked at the yearbook and he noticed that there was a Y in there and a W where they listed the activities that the students were in when they were at the other schools. You know, because your first couple years there was that blend going on. Were you involved at all with the newspaper, or did that get off to the ground?
The newspaper was sponsored by Miss Potzig or Mrs. Gergel, and she had met with the newspaper staff before school started, because that newspaper came out about the first or second day of school.
Oh, that's impressive.
And it had a torch on it. And they didn't exactly want, it was supposed to be chosen, but she had jumped the gun. And I think she was told about that.
But anyway,
But
it carried on. I think it was when I left, the torch was still there.
And it kind of established the fact that it was Blazers and not Trailblazers. Then we had the elections for the yearbook, and the drama teacher was into the capital AT, and so she found attribute or AT tribute as a name, and otherwise it would have been the Blazon.
Well, I noticed too, again in the yearbook, and it was mentioned earlier about the lettermen and how they were involved in.
The lettermen were hall monitors.
Right. But there's a picture in the yearbook about the lettermen, and they formed the letter A and T to again, that's a symbol that carries on, I believe, to this day.
Yeah.
Deanne, you were involved, as I said, in lots of different activities, United Nations, student government, not student government, but youth in government, and various others. How did you get so involved in all those different organizations?
Well, early on in my career, my department chair, John Barlin, approached me and said, we really would like some activities that would be a place for some other students to get involved with the school. Addison Trail is a comprehensive high school, and we've got lots of students who are involved in athletics. And so this is the early 70s, so we have to put it in a political context of that time. So there were some students who we today might label hippies. They had long hair and wore bell bottoms, and they weren't necessarily going to be on athletic teams, and they weren't seeing places where they might get involved in the school. So he first said, what about some kind of a club that discusses current events? So I said, okay, we can try something like that. So the first one I worked with was the Political Discussions Club. That was what it was called. And they actually even had, for 1 year, they had a float in the homecoming parade, but it was not a traditional float. It had an AT Blazer, and I don't remember, I think it was whatever high school had the Hornets as their mascot, and they were shaking hands. They weren't fighting each other, because that was what the students wanted to portray, kind of a different perspective. And from there, as you said, we started Model UN, and then with Youth in Government, having students involved in model United Nations or model legislatures. And at one point, we never had a lot of students, especially compared to some of the other schools that were involved in Youth in Government, which goes back to the late 40s in Illinois. And some YMCAs, because it's run through the YMCAs, would have quite a few students. We never had a large delegation, but we were able to elect a student governor, a governor of the state of Illinois.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for a small delegation from the north, it was pretty cool.
From your viewpoint, when you were a dean, I'll get back to you in just a second here. I would tend to think the students that were involved either in athletics or activities or something, generally those students they get along fairly well and there's not many problems. Is that true or false? Is that a bad impression I have? Or?
No, that's good. Overall, that I think activities are helpful.
That gives the students something to do besides just, coming to class.
It makes you feel worthwhile,
right.
And people need to feel worthwhile no matter who they are.
Yeah, I would think so. Nina, you...
I was going to come, I think he came in right after, and you were talked into the political discussion right after we had the underground newspaper.
Yes, I remember that. For 'em against 'em?
Yes, and the underground newspaper came out. Now, some of my yearbook staff members and the newspaper people were part of it or knew about it. I got called in and asked about it. They had sent a little girl around to put up posters, SDS is coming, and they called her in. They found out who was putting up the posters, and she said Student Dance Society, because she was a freshman and didn't know that she had been set up. And then they had the underground newspaper, and Dave Cook called me in, and he's asked whether I knew. I said, I think I know a little bit, but I don't think you want to know. And it turned out, I said, unless you would like to wipe out most of the Honor Society. And he said, just tell me where it's being printed. And I said, Motorola. And because it was Xerox, and those were the days of mimeographs and
Right.
dittos, and nothing was Xeroxed. And he knew exactly who was doing it then, and it got dropped, and Mr. Schmelzel took over an underground newspaper that called in for anybody to vent, and they had, 2 or 3 issues.
Now, Mr. Schmelzel was with the social studies.
He was the assistant principal.
He was an assistant principal.
So
okay.
there was a school-sponsored underground newspaper.
And that went on for maybe a year?
No,
total,
it went
not
on
even-
about 3 issues.
3 issues, okay.
You know, if you think about
Short-lived.
what they were talking about, it's really important too, because I know Dan mentioned athletics pretty well. They take care of the involvement with the students. The music department did, but all these other students don't really have that extra help or that extra outlet. And doing those kinds of things give these kids a chance to show and learn about leadership.
Right.
One of the things that is interesting about Addison, and I think Addison Trail has a lot to do with this, is the number of students that come back and live in the community and have kids, buy homes, and their kids go to Addison Trail. They go to District 4. I was in District 4 for 20 years. My last 4 years or 3 years, I had 4 of my ex-students as my board members. They had all gone through Addison Trail. They were so proud of that, they wanted their kids to have the same kind of experiences, so they came back to the community, got involved, and their kids were in school. And so they wanted to support the schools the same way other people had. And I think when you talk about a place for kids to, learn how to speak, and the political speeches and the torch and the yearbook, great place for kids to learn organizational skills, how to do things, and it really pays off. And I think it's a cycle that they came back to Addison. They were very
Well,
proud
I
of
would
it.
tend to think too, it helps them if they go on into college or if they go into a job, they've gotten some social skills, they've gotten to learn how to work, because whether you're working with an underground group or just a regular group, you have to interact with people. And like you said, York and Willowbrook had different philosophies. You have to learn how to get these to mesh together and to operate together.
In fact, one of the students who was involved early on in Model UN grew up in the community and is now a state legislator in the House of Representatives in Springfield.
Who is that?
Kathy Bulgalski Willis.
That-
And you worked with her when she was at Addison Trail?
Yes,
was it?
she was a student in Model UN, and she did DAR things, and so those seeds sprouted and grew.
One of the things that I'm fairly proud of in my lifetime at Addison Trail is I'm the one that got the blood drive to start. And it was really interesting, and I think you saw it too, because you guys were down there, people that had, time during the day to come through, is just watching the students, their first time really getting involved where they could do something that was really considered a grown-up type of activity, donating your blood. They knew from the stories that in some cases this could save a life. And you could just see them walk out of there, how proud they were. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just little things like that that go on in a high school, no matter whether it's Addison Trail or whatever it is. It gives the kids or the students some support in trying to go on and do things that are helpful to others throughout their lives.
Like that was the Toys for Tots that they
Right.
worked on. And I mean, that picked up a lot of students that did other things. I had a lot of students who thought it was so much fun to go out and buy presents for somebody they didn't know, and they did.
And the community appreciated that.
One of the clubs at Addison Trail one year bought they raised money and bought Christmas trees for people who couldn't afford their own Christmas tree. And I don't remember which club, might have been the Key Club, I don't know. But I went with them in a truck delivering Christmas trees to families that had asked for help. And the kids, the kids got to take the trees in and give them to the people, and it was a learning experience for those kids. That was really a very, very nice thing to do.
Well, getting a quality education is important, but it's not the only thing in a four-year high school. These are other kinds of things, are things that they can take with them throughout their whole life and be helpful to other people and themselves.
One of the other ways that I feel has been pretty helpful to try to have students make a connection to the school and the community has been through International Fest. It started as International Day, and then it grew into a week-long way for the horizons of the student body to be opened up. And a lot of those things are people that will come and talk about their experiences in foreign countries. But we also tried to get students involved. I remember one of the things that we did was to get some of the mainly Indian kids. We used a dance gym, and they did some sessions on playing cricket and demonstrating that, that sport, which is so important in certain parts of the world, and our students know nothing about it. And even that continues today in regard to the International Dance Program, where lots of students will present international dances, and our student body could get pretty excited about that. So another way that different students can get connected to the school.
Well, I think it's important that the community realizes all the different aspects. We try to bring that out somewhat in the different topics that we discussed through the course of the day. But there is a lot of things that go on at Addison Trail that you may or may not know of. Some of those clubs, probably only the people that were in them may really, and their families, may have a very good idea of what went on. But I think most of them saw their job too. I think most of the activity people saw their job as doing a service to the community also. That in one way or another, through the Toys for Tots, through the blood drive, through whatever the different activity was, that they try to do something to give back to the community, which again is important, like you said.
Yeah,
So,
huge.
On the Addison Trail, at one time, I don't know whether they still do, but they had an active teacher-parent organization, and very few high schools do. You have athletics, you have music again, but not one just for the whole school. And they would have an annual fundraiser, spaghetti dinner, and they would raise money and then turn it around to scholarship for kids. But that was just a general kind of organization supporting the school.
but didn't they, again, as an administrator, that's again an activity that I think we're in the right area for. But if for somebody like you as an administrator, that becomes very important, that you have another way to communicate with people.
Absolutely.
When things are coming up, that you know what's going on in the building and also out in the community.
Yes. Well, we even, when I became principal, we were talking about discipline and kinds of kids cutting classes and things. So we were talking about changing our behavior policies, and we started a parent-teacher advisory group, and we brought in some parents talking about our problems, and they were very supportive on how we wanted to solve them, because there were some issues that we needed to resolve. And they were supportive, but we brought in about 25 people and met with them frequently. I remember as the principal, they told me, we'll come meet with you, but if you don't have an agenda, don't call a meeting, just have a meeting.
Right.
Only call us if there's something up. Well, we had some issues, and so it worked very well.
Was that one of the joys of being the dean, is working with the dress codes?
Yeah. Yeah, remember when, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. You look at some of the sports on TV now and you wonder if there is a dress code out there anymore.
Times have
Yeah,
changed.
there is.
So,
You go for change.
is there anything else that you guys would like to add to the discussion here?
Well, there were also the academic bowl that came
Oh,
up.
that's
and
right.
That was very good because it took our best students, since they went meeting the best students in the whole conference, and we did very well in some of those too.
Well, and then didn't they have a state level on that too?
Maybe after I left.
Maybe
I
that-
don't-
Yeah, they could
Yeah,
they
they
could
do.
compete.
They
Go
do.
on
Go
for the
further
whole
on.
thing. Okay, well, we appreciate your taking part in this section on the activities that take place today and took place in the years past at Addison Trail High School. And we appreciate all the students that participated in that. We hope that if you have students thinking of coming to Addison Trail, that you get them encouraged to take part in all the different activities that are available up there. We hope that you enjoy the sessions that we've had talking about the history of Addison Trail High School for 50 years with some of the retired faculty members. It's been a very pleasant time. We've enjoyed our days at Addison Trail, and we hope that you got a little bit of an insight as to what has been going on at Addison Trail for the past 50 years. We hope that you will continue to see Addison Trail grow, Addison Trail to become an even bigger and better school than it already is, and that you will continue to be proud of Addison Trail High School. We are all very proud to have been a member of the organization, and we hope to see it continue in Addison, Illinois. Cheers to another great 50 years.